way better role. Way like love it. I'm like
Ready?
okay.
This is Haley.
And this is Bailey. You're listening to Unleashed. Haley, I can't believe we're actually together recording this podcast.
This is such a cozy vibe.
This is such a
We
cozy
need a
vibe.
studio.
We really do.
We need a studio. Wait.
This is our mini studio.
Yes. Also, I'm noticing there's like a hole right there in that tree. Anyway, sorry.
There's a tree outside our window.
Yeah.
We are sitting on a couch show together right now. If our setup looks a little different, and I
Yeah.
feel like that is just so nice to look at each other instead of through a
Is this
phone.
considered a cloud couch? So, you know, our cloud couches that are deep and like everyone. I feel like everyone's getting cloud couch.
And everyone is getting cloud couches, but we actually just got a new couch, and I think that's considered a cloud couch, right?
Your new one that you're
Yeah.
getting? Yeah, for sure. The
I don't
deep
know if
ones,
this is as
the
much a
dreams.
cloud couch, but I love this couch.
I love it. I used to not like white furniture because I used to think white furniture was like you're setting yourself up for just stains and things that like that would bug me. But now I'm like embracing that. Like,
But something someone said is like, well, if you have a dark couch, you're just hiding the stains and you can't see them,
Yes.
which is kind of gross. Where a white one, you just know it's there, so you have to clean it more and it ends up being cleaner because you see them.
wow,
Yeah.
there's some food for thought. You're just like hide the mess or clean the mess.
I mean, a lot can happen on a white couch. Like I was in college and I had some like people come over and someone sat on our white couch with blue gum on their butt. I don't know how they probably sat on the ground somewhere and then or on their shoe
I don't know
or
why I
whatever.
misunderstood that.
Yeah, it does sound a little weird when it comes out of my mouth, but it did take a little to get out of the couch. It eventually came out. So, it's just one of those things where you have to keep up a white couch a little more. But aesthetically, I love white couches.
I love them. I think they're like, well, if you have a dog or you have a baby, it's like it's gonna get dirty. I'm like, yeah, well,
My cousin has 5 kids and has a white couch. So, if she can do it, we can do it.
if she can do it, we're good. And I mean, they're pretty young kids too.
Yeah.
So I mean,
from like 2 to 16. That's the age range of all of them. So
wow. Yeah, you're bound to have spills and stains
sure.
or whatever. Just gotta embrace it. As long
Yeah.
as it's comfy.
Exactly.
Anyway, sorry. I love the couch.
Off
Sofa.
topic.
Technically it's called sofa. My sister would freak out if I said couch.
Well, she's gonna listen to this, so if you are listening to this, you can call Haley right now and give her
call
a
me
hard
out
time.
on it. It's funny that we were able to get our schedules lined up like this because I literally have been traveling back to back, and then you just got back from Florida, and then on top of that you're leaving again, and then you go to Europe, and I'm going to Paris, and so it's like, what is happening? And this was like the perfect time to line up and like meet up, record together, hang out. It's been really fun, but like, holy cow, we've been traveling so much, and like, how do you do this?
I feel like looking at you, I'm like trying not to like trying to look serious and also like look at you. So I'm not used to this because we're so used to recording over camera. Okay.
Well, it's funny because I'm looking at this and like seeing my delay on yours.
Yeah.
It's like wild.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, there is such a delay.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's definitely hard getting our schedules to line up, but I also think we're really good at getting our schedules to line up because we understand how our lives work because we both have such similar lifestyles of traveling so much. And I think it's really hard for people to understand that don't travel a lot. And I totally get that. And I respect that because it's a hard lifestyle to understand. But I think that's something we've done a really good job of. And it's definitely tricky, don't get me wrong, for us to line up times, but we're really good at like finding those random dates and making it happen, even with our crazy schedules, and being really flexible if it weren't to happen. And I think that's one of the biggest things is being like, let's tentatively plan this.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't work or whatever it is, and I think that's worked really well for us and just knowing our lifestyle. And I'm super excited to talk about all the things travel related that today, just because I feel like there's so much that goes into traveling like we do.
So much.
Because we don't travel once a year or twice a year. Like, a family
vacation.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I did it growing up. I mean, we had family vacations. I didn't travel as much as I travel now. We definitely did our trips and stuff like that, but it's nothing like how this has been. And it's really cool to see because you travel so differently compared to how I travel, and it's cool to see the different variations of it. And we talk about that, how the way you travel. I mean, you RV. I mean, you do a lot of Airbnbs, and then I do flying, and I do hotels, and it's just interesting to see the different dynamics and how it works. And I mean, do you ever think this would be your lifestyle?
Definitely not. I don't think I ever looked at my life and thought this would be how it would be, I guess, just because I was raised in a really, I don't want to say traditional, but just like, once a year vacations here and there. And it wasn't like we traveled all the time, or I was used to my parents traveling. We were very much in one spot and we would do family vacations. And I always loved moving around and doing, I guess not moving around because I never really moved, but like going on trips and doing that. Like I always got really excited to travel. I guess that's the best way to explain it. But I don't know if I ever thought, wow, I'm going to be traveling full time, especially with like my personality that I love being near my family. I kind of always thought, oh, I'm just going to settle down right near my parents and just do
Yeah.
exactly what we're doing already. And I actually love it so much because it pushed me out of my comfort zone. And I think that's been really cool. And really, it was inspired by Evan because Evan was actually raised in more of a household where they did travel a lot. His mom traveled for work, his dad traveled for work, and he was so used to the on the go all the time. And then he went into kiteboarding and now he travels all the time. But it's been really fun to get into traveling full time because it's so different and it's changed me in a lot of ways, good ways.
Was that hard for you in the beginning when you guys were, like, first dating for you and Evan to, like was he traveling a lot in the beginning when you first dated?
Yeah, he was traveling a lot, but I wouldn't say as much as we're traveling right now, but still a lot. And it was definitely an adjustment for me learning how to do distance because I had really never seen that. Like my parents had never spent, I think they told me recently that they've never spent more than like 2 days apart or something. Like, something crazy, like, maybe once they spent a week apart, where for Evan, he was again, like I said a minute ago, but he was raised in a household where his parents traveled for work, so he was
That was
used to seeing
normal.
his parents
Yeah.
apart and doing things, and, it was just a little bit more normal for him to see versus me, I was like, "Wait, my parents, like, never are apart," and that's what I was used to, so I think it definitely took me some time, but it was really great for us because we learned so much about each other, and now we have the opportunity where we're literally living in the smallest space you could live in.
Literally.
Never apart. But, we've gone through such different extremes too. And I think it's really pushed us in such a cool way to learn each other. And even living in the RV, I know we're not talking relationships, but it's funny because my dad, or like, I think you even brought up that you're like, how are you doing in the RV in such a small space with somebody? But
Literally.
I love it. And it's so cool. But I was not, back to your question, I was not raised in a
Your RV.
like, in an RV. I was not raised with parents that moved around or were apart. So, yeah, distance was hard at the beginning, and he was traveling a lot, but it was really, really good for our relationship, and now
Yeah, I
we are
mean,
just
you
together all the
well, and it's
time.
cool too because since you both hadn't done the RV life, I mean, I was right, Evan had
Yeah, no, he
yeah,
hasn't.
I mean, you gotta be able to learn it together. I feel like it's kinda like when you bring into a new aspect into a relationship and someone's maybe more familiar with it, then it can be I mean, not to say it wouldn't be like you wouldn't still learn things, but when you're doing it together and figuring it out together, it adds a whole new level and dynamic for that relationship. And traveling in itself is very stressful. I don't care what anyone says. There are always stressful parts about traveling, even if it's like for whether business, leisure, whatever. It's super they have their moments.
For sure.
And so learning to embrace those times together, especially when you're going to be living in such a small space, I feel like that could get tricky, but it's cool to see that you guys were able to find your rhythm and your routine and structure with it all and make such a memorable experience out of Evan's, traveling and going together. I think that's really cool.
I definitely am so happy that we've had this opportunity because I feel like it's such a unique opportunity. And we talked to a lot of people, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, you guys are living such a cool life. And Evan will be like, do people just say that? I think I've said that before on our podcast, but I'm like, no, I think we're living a really unique life.
Yeah.
And we're really taking advantage of being able to travel full time and, always be on the go. And yeah, there are hard parts of it. And that was something when we were talking about podcast topics, I was like, I'd love to talk about traveling because there are amazing parts of it, but there's hard parts of it too. And what are the challenges? And, there's just so many different things you can cover within traveling. And I'm excited to dive into all the different topics, good
Yes.
and hard parts.
Oh,
Like,
totally.
there's so many different layers. And I don't think you always see that when you're
Yeah.
looking at people who are traveling and you're like, oh my gosh, they're traveling full time. It must be amazing all the time. Yes, it's amazing, but there's layers to it. And that's something we obviously have two different experiences going through.
So before you guys traveled in the RV, you guys were traveling, I think what the was Europe, right?
Yeah, we were doing a lot of trips to Europe.
Okay. So how was that experience going international? Did you guys go together? Did you go separately, individually?
The first time I went to Europe with him, I actually flew out alone. I met him there. It was my first time ever traveling alone like that, and it was a big change. I was definitely nervous, but I also went into it I think I was so excited to go with him that I was, like, trying not to overthink the part that I was traveling there alone, 'cause I was just so excited. We had, like, just started dating, it was something different. I feel like it really pushed me and it helped me grow a lot. I do love traveling more together just because it's fun to travel
Yeah.
with somebody. Most of our travels, we have flown together, but there's been trips where we haven't, and I think both are honestly really good experiences for everybody. I think traveling like this is so unique, and you do learn a lot. Like, traveling alone, you do have to kind of figure it out, or when you're with somebody, you can lean on them a little more.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I've had both experiences. Like, I was just recently did a little trip by myself and things just didn't go as planned. And I think if I didn't have that experience before traveling to Europe by myself, I probably would have freaked out a lot more in that situation. But because
Yeah.
I had that experience, I was
It
able to
helps you
handle
prepare
it
for
a
that
little better.
moment. No, I think that's great. It's really I mean, all these moments in life always, I feel like, lead up to something that helps us sometimes go through a moment that could be bigger, greater, harder. And I mean, it's an accumulation of events. And I mean, do you think that traveling, so you've flown alone internationally. How was that?
It was good. It was a little nerve-wracking for sure the first time. I actually ended up sitting next to a mom with, like, a baby, and I was a preschool teacher at that time, so I feel like that kind of, like, it just kinda I was helping her, she was flying alone, so
Yeah.
we became friends, which was, like, helpful, I think, just having someone, like,
Yeah.
nice next to me. Um, It was definitely nerve-wracking, though, like, I had traveled before with my parents, but, like, again, like I said, it was more family trips, and, when you're flying with your parents, everything's handled and taken care of, and they're on it usually, at least my parents were always on it, I didn't really have to think about anything when I got to the airport. When you're traveling alone, you gotta make sure you're on it,
Yeah, you gotta stay on top of
everything is
everything.
ready. Yeah,
There's a lot more going on.
exactly. I know you've said you've traveled alone before, we talked about that on one of our podcasts. Have you only traveled alone once?
I have traveled alone. I definitely did before, mostly before Bryce and I got married. Like, I traveled all the time. I flew. And then really since we've been married, that's when we really started traveling more. Traveling more together. I think that the main thing for me is what changed for me in traveling was bringing Olive. We have our dog with us a lot, and we do have our trips where it's just Bryce and I. And then I have flown a few times alone without Bryce. I think it's been kind of a different type of experience. So it's more of like going to see family and stuff like that. I don't really go on vacations without Bryce anymore. It's just kind of not
Yeah, I
fun.
could see that.
Yeah, yeah. He's trying to push me to like go and do like a girls trip with my mom and my sister, like go somewhere with you and stuff like that. But I don't really. I have never left the country until Bryce and I got married. Actually, we went to Mexico for our honeymoon, and that was.
Is that the only time you've left the country?
And then I went to Bahamas
Oh,
with my
nice.
parents.
But you haven't been to Europe?
Yeah, we're going to Paris in a few weeks.
That's super exciting that you haven't been.
Nope, I've never been, and I don't know what to expect.
You're gonna have so much
anytime
fun.
I do a French accent too, it's like Italian, then it goes like kind of like British. It doesn't work. So I'm like, oh gosh. I actually just learned this is gonna sound so funny. My sister was telling me, she's like, just use your maps on your phone to help you get around because everyone gets so lost. And she's like, just use your maps on your phone. I'm like, but it's all gonna be in French. And she's like, what? And I'm like, it still stays in English, Haley. And I'm like, oh, it does? I'm like, you know how like your phone will automatically adjust time zones?
Oh my gosh. You're like, it's gonna change.
I thought it all changed to like their local language. And she's like, no. I was like, okay, that makes me feel a lot better because I'm like trying to practice like left and rights in French.
My God.
And so yeah, no, I was like relieved on that. So I'll let you know how that ends up going. But I mean, when I heard you flew alone internationally, I was like, oh my gosh, that's like so scary. Was that scary? I mean, did you have any like? I mean, anytime you travel, you always run into something. I feel like something always happens. I mean, did something happen?
No, it was pretty easy. It was pretty smooth. It was like nerve-wracking a little, but I still think I was so excited that the excitement kind of took over that, and I didn't really have time to be as scared. But yeah, there's always, different things when you're traveling, and I think the more we've traveled, the more I've gotten, like, comfortable with things happening, I feel like.
You go with the flow.
Yeah, I just feel like things are gonna happen, and it can be frustrating, but you kind of are like, "Okay, you're traveling, you're flying, like, things are bound to happen sometimes." But for the most part, I don't feel like that much happens.
Was it hard kind of finding your rhythm traveling with Evan when you were traveling internationally compared to being in the RV?
Yeah, definitely. It's such a different way of traveling, even though for the most part when we travel, unless we're doing, like, a vacation kind of trip, we're really just picking up what we're doing and putting it in a different location. That's how I always explain it. But I will say, like, it's taken me a while, even I guess it's still different, but it took me a long time internationally to be confident to go to a coffee shop alone because, like, it's not like they always speak English, and, doing things where it's, like, getting confident somewhere else definitely took me a little time and a few trips, but for the most part, I would say there are similarities, but there's also differences just because 'cause they're such different environments where, like, the RV is, like, our home, and we're
Yeah.
very, like, confident and comfortable in it, where when we're traveling internationally, we're staying in Airbnb and, getting the lay of the land a lot more, and it's also just somewhere so different versus in the RV. It's a little, you're in the United
Yeah.
States, so
Yeah.
there are
So
similarities.
you Airbnbs, hotels. I want to talk about that for a sec. you prefer Airbnb or hotel, or I mean, I guess it really just depends on where you're going.
I've really become so easygoing with traveling.
Which is
This
funny
is
because I'm so not that way. I am very much like if I don't know what I'm getting myself into, I will freak out.
yeah, I'm like become very easygoing, especially just traveling with Evan. And a lot of times we're traveling for his events that I know it's just gonna be we're kind of like we're usually trying to find the cheapest place. And yeah, it's still safe and it's a good place, but we're there for a month and a half. So if we're
That's what I was saying. When
spending
you're there long, I think it's different when you're going for like a week family
yeah,
vacation versus when you're actually going for like it's. I guess I'd say him training for the Olympics is business.
yeah,
It's a
it's more
business.
business
Yeah,
and I'm working when we're there and all of
yeah,
that. So I love both and I think both are such a different experience. But I would say for the most part we do Airbnbs, and then when we do like a mini trip, sometimes we'll do a hotel. Like we did a hotel last summer in Barcelona.
yeah,
But I've really become just like, oh, that works. Okay, that's what we're saying. Great. But before we traveled full time, I probably was a little different about it. But now that you're in one spot for a month and a half, you
yeah,
are trying to find like the best deal that makes sense and is safe and clean. There's obviously things to it,
yeah.
but we've stayed at some interesting places, that's for sure. And we stayed at some really nice places. It's a mix of it. When you're traveling full time, that's part of it, I feel like. And you do kind of get used to it, I think, a little more, at least for
Yeah.
me. And I'm like,
Mhm.
we're at that stage in life where it's like we're traveling and we're also hustling. Is that the right word? Where we're like
Yeah, yeah,
working. It's not like, where my parents are at, where we go on one nice vacation a year and you're just
yeah.
saying that
And it's like a
trip.
leisurely trip.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
interesting because I mean, I don't feel like from the vibes I'm getting, it doesn't sound like this was something that you were always like, were you, I mean, the whole experience with you traveling and then traveling with Evan and then it's different type, you say you're very relaxed about it. Were you always relaxed about it? Because I'm not relaxed very I stress about it. Like when we get there, if the sheets are dirty or anything like that, I freak out.
I don't know if I really ever thought about it much before we started traveling that much because it just like we weren't traveling like this
Yeah.
is really like the best way to explain it. But I definitely have become a lot more easygoing, but I think even from the beginning, we were so new when we started traveling, I don't think I would have said anything. It kinda just was like, "Okay," but it was never dirty or anything gross. We stayed at really cute
Yeah.
places. Yeah, they're really different when you're in Europe just because they're decorated different because 'cause you're in a different country,
It's a different
but
country.
we've always stayed at clean places, so I don't think that was ever really a factor in it. It's just, like, different, I would say. Airbnbs are just different depending on where you stay. Even if you're trying to find, like, the nicest Airbnb in tiny towns, it's still
They're different.
very
And
different
that's what I've
than
noticed, like, when
in
we're
LA.
staying we're staying in an Airbnb in Paris, and all the ones I was even looking at, I was comparing to, they were very unique to the country, and I've always, like, said that, and Bryce and I've talked about this several times, that when you're traveling internationally and you're expecting an American experience, you're not gonna have a good time. It's gonna be something that you'll run into a lot of problems and
So
you'll be
true.
disappointed. You don't travel international expecting an American
No,
experience.
and that's something we definitely do. We jump into the culture just
Yes.
because we're in these teeny tiny towns, not in touristy spots.
And
So I
I'd
guess
say
that's
that's a
the best way to
huge
explain it.
yeah.
I'm trying to explain it in the right words, but that was a good way to explain it for sure. We're jumping into the culture a little more.
I think that's a really good, like, takeaway for a lot of people who are wanting to take that step and travel internationally if they haven't or if they want to travel
And
internationally.
doing it on a budget. Like, that's something really interesting is we travel pretty cheap.
Yeah. I mean, and that's something Bryce there's 2 types of travelers, I feel like. There's, like, those who like budget and, like, make sure they have, like, things put away for every, like, aspect, and then, like, Bryce and we can't do that, or I will f I we can't relax, like, it's just not
Yeah.
my style.
But we don't even I wouldn't even say we like budget things. We just like learn to travel super cheap. And I think if someone's listening to
Oh, so
this,
you're talking, like,
yeah,
in
like
general.
we just have learned to travel really cheap,
Well,
which I
that's
think is
amazing.
really cool to hear just because I don't know if I ever thought you could do it. I
Yeah.
think we do our lifestyle less than we would do if we were renting.
Okay, okay. So do you think that that will change when you're no longer doing, like, RV living and stuff like that?
Probably. I'm sure like then you stay at resorts with, that's it's a different way of traveling. When
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
staying at resorts and stuff like that, yeah, you're not going to travel probably on the not budget, but like a smaller but I don't know, budget's the only word I can use. On a small
So good.
I don't know how I'm trying to explain it,
No, I get
but
what you're saying. Like, you go into it's all about the vibe and what you're going for. I think in this aspect, I'm saying that if when you're no longer traveling for Evan's training and the Olympics, all that stuff, it would be more so for leisurely, and that's when you go into it the different perspective.
yeah.
And I think that Bryce and I travel for leisure. It's
Yeah,
not business
exactly.
oriented.
Which
And
is
so
cool.
that's what's really cool to see the side because I mean, yeah, all of the travel air definitely is business, but at the same time, I call it my hobby job because it's like a hobby, but it's also my job.
Yeah.
And then Bryce can work anywhere, so that's what's really cool about that. And I think that with your job, you can work anywhere too. So
Yeah, exactly.
you're able to experience these new cultures and these new areas, but at the same time, you're also learning, growing yourself, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. I mean, I can't even imagine how many times, like, I had a panic attack when I first flew along with Olive, and now I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's I can do that. No problems."
But it's doing those things and experience those
Yeah.
things, and I think, like, the places we stay, I'm trying to, like, explain it right, and, like but they're really cute, it's just so, like,
Yeah,
it's
I
smaller, like
boutique-y, I
yeah,
think.
boutique is kind of the I guess, the best way to explain it, but I think listening to this, if you are listening to this, knowing it doesn't you don't have to have a bunch saved to do the lifestyle
No,
we
you don't have to travel really expensive to have an experience.
Yeah,
Like, I know
exactly.
people who can go to Europe
I mean,
for
it's
well
like
under
we
$3,000.
can like, sometimes we can find places like 40, $50 a night depending in, like, Italy and things like that, like, Airbnbs there are so much cheaper than finding them
Oh,
here, and you're gonna get
Bali?
the same yeah, Bali's really
Bali is
so
it's the
yeah,
only expensive part about Bali is getting to
I
Bali.
know. Yeah, that is crazy.
That literally, your flights are the most expensive part, and
Yeah,
then once you get there, like, housing can be, like, for a
I know, it's
whole,
so
like,
crazy.
villa, you can get, like, 170 a night, and you get, like, your own staff,
Yeah,
basically, like,
I know.
butler and a chef, like,
It's
it's
so
so
cool.
cool. I'm like, "Wow, if you only move to Bali."
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like, "Yeah,
right?
right, I'm living large."
Yeah.
But, I mean, you encouraged me to be able to try these experiences, like, I really wanted to try and, like, come down to I wanna say that. You really encouraged me to come and, like, see you and, like, do all these things by myself without Bryce. Boy, that I'm so glad I didn't though. 'Cause so much like Olive's MRI. Anyway, we will get into that another time. But I'm like, oh my gosh, like I really do want to take like those opportunities to be able to not always have Bryce with me, to be able to experience life. Not to say I don't like traveling Bryce, like that's not what I'm saying at all. But like when you grow so much when you do these things with other people, and I feel like with you, you have that attitude of I wanna try and do it for myself. I mean, even when you're not traveling, you're like that, and I think that's really cool. But I wanna ask, what is okay, this is kinda going off topic not off topic, but, like, you've traveled so many places. What is a place you would not travel to again?
That's a good question. We've definitely spent a good amount of time in Mexico, and it was fun and different, but we both got sick, and
Oh,
I feel like that's just one spot, like, I'm happy to go again if Evan trains there, but I don't know if it's somewhere I'm, like,
you wanna go.
dying to go
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
and I feel like it's always something where it's like, make sure you're not going alone places, and that I just don't wanna have to really worry about,
yeah.
but we had a good time. It was a good trip, and we've done it a few times. We spent a month there one time in a little town in Baja, and it was really fun, but I just think that's one place I'm not like, "We need to go back."
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
probably
you
one of
you
those
can live
places.
life without
Yeah,
going and visiting it
I
again.
experienced it, and I'm
I
like,
agree,
"Okay."
100%. I will never go back to Mexico in my life ever again. Nope. I will never
We
go
both
back.
got Montezuma's Revenge. Is
Yeah,
that what
no,
it's called?
I didn't give it. Bryce got
Oh,
it
you
on
did?
our honeymoon.
Yeah.
I never traveled internationally,
We
and
were
I
sick for so long, it was
yeah,
horrible.
I thought he was dying. He told me to go get Pepto, and I went down, and they're like, "That'll be $80," and I was like, "What?" And then it turns out it was 80 pesos, and so I, like, go to the room, and I was telling Bryce, I'm like, "I just spent $80 on this. I'm so sorry." He's like, "It was pesos. You're fine." I'm like, "Oh gosh." Like,
I
I
mean,
was
it's different when you haven't traveled too, it's not like you're gonna know those things, and maybe it sounds like, once you're
I never traveled
traveling more
internationally, so I
yeah,
didn't even understand
exactly.
that phone numbers are different. Like, I was
Yeah.
trying to call a doctor, and I didn't know how to do that.
No, it's definitely different when you're traveling,
Yeah, it's hard and it's scary. I had no idea, and I think that
especially when you get sick. We got a cold when we were in the Netherlands, and we went to, like a CVS, a pharmacy, whatever, and we were looking at things, and we were like, "Huh, we need to figure out what is for colds here." You know what I mean? Like, it's just different. Yeah, you can find
yeah.
similar things, but they're in different languages and things like that, and just making sure we're taking the right things.
I mean, I'm curious to know if you're listening and you comment or let us know where's a place you would never travel again. I'm very curious to know people's perspectives on that, whether if it was a good time, bad time, you just didn't like it, it was expensive. Like, I definitely think that that's a really interesting question to ask people.
That is super interesting because I also think people do things and it's like everyone likes traveling differently.
Oh, so
Like
true.
Evan is so not a touristy spot person. Like we went to Venice and we literally walked around for like an hour and he's like, I think we've seen everything. I was like, huh? And he's like, yeah, we can go do something. Like we're good. And I was like, okay, we're not like, and I don't think either of us the most touristy travelers, especially because we loved going to somewhere where we kind of get in the culture and like those kind of things. So we're so used to that. And I was like, really noticed, I was like, "Maybe touristy things are not our thing," but that's
That's
okay.
okay.
You gotta try it and see, and, like, there's some things we really like, but I think everyone travels really differently, and that's interesting to know, like, what people like. I talked to a couple one time and they're like, "Oh yeah, my boyfriend hates like walking around and just like looking at things and I love that, but I learned that." And everyone just travels differently and I think that's really cool.
Just because someone's giving you advice on traveling doesn't mean you have to take that. It doesn't mean that's what works for some, works for others.
Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier, some people have to travel like strictly on a budget. Like they have to plan out every penny.
Yeah.
But like for Bryce and I, that would never work. Like that would make us feel like we're being suffocated and we couldn't relax and enjoy it. And that's just how it is. So we rather go into it. We go, okay, we'll take care of it when we get back and figure it out. But that's just our circumstance.
Yeah, and
And
everyone's
not everyone
different.
can travel like that. That
Yeah.
would give them mass anxiety for some people. And so, but like for you guys, I think that it's cool that you don't like touristy spots because literally there's like a whole category of traveling that you can like filter on certain websites of non-touristy spots, like the local
Finding
perspective.
locals is a huge thing. We went to Sardinia, which is a little island off the coast of Italy, and we spent a month there. We did 2 weeks. He had like a training and event, and then we spent 2 weeks road tripping the island. And we booked nothing, and we'd meet locals, and we'd ask them where to go, and like that's how we'd book our next
That's
spot the
so
night
cool.
before. So
That's
that's
such a fun
cool.
idea.
Yeah, which is so different and such a different way to travel. And I don't know, before like old me probably have been like, oh my gosh, I need a plan. I need to know where I'm going. I need to know where we're staying. And I've gotten so good at just being like, oh, okay, like we haven't booked our place from our night, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. Like we got to one Airbnb and it didn't work out. It smelled like cigarettes and we just weren't happy with it. So we ended up leaving and we like canceled it. And I remember I had a huge meeting for work and I was sitting in the car taking this meeting and everyone was trying to find a new Airbnb and totally worked out. But like old me might have panicked, but I was like, okay, we'll figure it out. It's no big deal.
Okay, so we talk about your least favorite place. What about your favorite place? Where would you recommend people travel? Like you would
Oh, we
go.
both said our least favorite place. It's like, did you say your least favorite place? Let me think about my favorite place now.
Yeah, I'm curious.
I was thinking,
Favorite place.
my favorite place? It's a good question. I feel like I'm gonna say this and really think about it and be like, oh, it's somewhere else. But I really do think I loved Sardinia. It was so much fun. We went there and I've gone there twice or three times. I can't remember now. But we spent a good amount of time there. We've gone to different areas and the water is so beautiful and it's such a pretty place. We actually have always ended up going during off season because they try to schedule kiteboarding events a little on off season, so it's not like the peak
Yeah, that
time.
makes sense.
But I love it. It's definitely I've seen a lot of people post about it, but when we go, it's never crowded. It's very mellow. It's very cute. I really like it. If you haven't done like an
How's the
island,
food?
the food's good. A lot of seafood. You definitely have to look a little bit more for not. I guess it depends on the area you're in too, but the food is really good.
That's the one thing I like always like to check is the food. Like I'm very intrigued to see how Paris is
You
gonna
definitely still
be.
have to find the places though. Like
Yeah.
even there, we like we really have to find the places. And crazy story, we one time randomly, Evan was on a meeting. I was like researching places, and I found a sushi place. Like I was like, okay, let's go try it. It was like in the mountains, like deep, like hard to find. What it was the best sushi we've ever had. It was so cute. It was amazing. I was like, why is this in the middle of the ocean in Italy on a little island that I can't get to all the time? But it's those things where it's like you never know how you're gonna find the best food, but you need to know people. Like I said, I went to Paris and I found no good food, and people would be like, "Really?"
Really?
Yeah, but I didn't
Like
know good
that? Just
places.
like that?
Yeah, like just like that. Like maybe I found a
I've never
little.
even been. And
Like
I'm like,
maybe
really?
but, like, maybe I did, but I really don't remember leaving and being like, "Wow, that was really good."
Were you in Paris,
Yeah,
Paris?
I went to Paris.
Really? Because like, okay, there's a place that I've heard high things. Like my parents are huge Paris people. Like
Yeah.
they would live there if they
I mean, I
like
know there's good spots, I just didn't know the good
you
spots.
just didn't find
We were
them.
just there, no plan,
Well,
it
it's
was
really
quick.
hard. Like I've been trying to find like good places to eat. Like I'm a huge I can't say huge foodie. I'm a pending foodie. Like I'm really starting to develop a savory like palate and like figure out these things that I like and I'm willing to try new things, but like no, it's really interesting to hear because it's not easy finding, I think, food places that are like really good internationally. It's not like it is in America. Like it's you can't.
But even if you come here from somewhere else, like, they need to know the local spots too. It's the same thing if you're traveling anywhere new, I think.
Yeah, I think. Well, I've heard Angela's is very good in Paris. So next
That's
time
good
you
to know.
go, I'm gonna try it. I'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I definitely think I know there's good food in Paris. Like I always call it everywhere in Europe, Italy. My Paris. My parents' friends actually have a place in Paris, and they went and they had the best food because she knew all the places. So now this time, I'll definitely go with like
Yeah.
a list, not a menu, a list of places to try because I know there's good food. I just didn't know, and
That's the
I
math
went with
guy
a
info.
friend, and it was quick, and
Yeah.
there just wasn't much planning there, and we had some good places. We went to this. Oh, that was London. We went to this like really like fancy, cute Instagrammer place. It's very cute, but we were like, wow, the food was like meh, you
Meh,
know?
right? Well, and that's what's interesting too, because I mean, if you're a picky eater, that's even harder. I think with food, and whether if it's in America or internationally, I was looking at this like it was on the Seine cruise, and it was like a dinner, and you like go around and you eat a meal, and then you watch all these sites. but the menu was like, oh, I was like, I'm gonna have to eat some protein bars or something before, because this was not something I'm gonna be like into. It was sea bass and then veal and guinea fowl, and then there was something else. It was like snails, which is huge in France. They love their escargot, and I'm like, dude, I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I like chicken, like maybe beef.
But if you definitely go somewhere and you're traveling, I think just knowing
You have
people
to be
or knowing
open-minded to that.
places and trying different things is
You'd be
huge to find good
surprised.
spots.
And that's the thing. Like, I always like to try at least something new. Like, I really do not like salmon, but I like to try it wherever I go, just to see if I can find maybe a winner.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with us. Like, we went to a restaurant and you ordered sushi, and I'm like, I really don't like sushi.
I like am dying right now because anytime we get on Food Talks, I think it becomes a food podcast. Have you noticed that? Like, the second we start talking about food, we like really veer down
I
the food.
Penning booty, Bailey.
Have you noticed that? I was like, okay,
circling back. But yeah, no, like, you
No,
really did push me to try new stuff, and that's what's cool. Like, and you can't expect, like, you can't go to a new country and expect that. Okay, so circling back. Sorry.
No, I love it. We both do it. It's great.
Sardinia, right? Is that what you said? Yeah,
Sardinia. I could probably be pronouncing it wrong. I pronounce every place.
Sardinia. Yes. As for me, I don't know what my favorite place. Mine's so like boring because I haven't really been in anywhere like crazy. Hawaii's been beautiful. Charleston. Yeah, I mean, I really like Charleston, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I mean, these fun places. Bahamas, I've been. I love Bahamas. It's gorgeous. It was really fun. I think that I just have a lot of fun places. There's a lot of great places you can travel to. And so, I mean, if you're clubbers, tell us what your favorite places to travel to. And let us know if you like being called clubbers.
As we get awkward.
As we're like still vibing that out. What's something you always have to take with you in traveling?
Okay, I've been really thinking about this for the last like minute as I cut this out, that silence.
20 minutes.
But honestly, I've become so easygoing. I feel like I can't call myself easygoing, but I love a lot of clothes, so that's not one thing. I definitely like to overpack.
I have options.
But I feel like my computer, that sounds so like general, but it's like for work and stuff, like I love being able to have my computer and get things done. I mean, there's so many things that I love to bring, like, you know, I love my AirPod Maxes. Like, there's things that I think I'd recommend for traveling, but things that I have to have, it's like, I feel like I know I can always figure it out if I don't have it. But I don't know. I'm sure there's something way better than that. And like something we talked about a little bit before we got on this podcast was having a portable charger is huge.
Yes.
I can't say I always bring that because I definitely don't. But
you realized recently.
I realized recently because I got to London and the first time I'd ever traveled alone, like I met Evan in Italy. This was like when we first started dating. And then he had to fly somewhere else. So I flew to London and met a friend and I landed and my phone died. And I had never been anywhere internationally alone. And I definitely learned very quickly, like, oh, I should probably make sure my phone doesn't die. But I just bought one. Like I found a place to buy one. But that's something definitely to always have that. I just thought of another one. Oh, for me, this sounds silly too, but I always bring a beach bag because we're always at the beach unless we're in like London.
That's really cute.
Paris,
I love that.
That's something I actually had to learn because I never thought to pack a bag, but like having a bag inside your bag when you get somewhere is actually really nice.
I realized that this trip because I was like hauling my backpack everywhere and I'm like, this is not, I don't need my whole backpack, but I forgot a bag in my bag.
That is, until you're in a position where you need it, you don't think about it. Those are all like really simple things. And if you ask me like a list of things, I definitely have a list of what I'd bring. But those are just the two off kind of the top of my head as I thought about it for a minute. But anything you really have to bring, you're gonna have some good answer. I already know.
I have a few. How much time you got? I left my watch. Sorry. I just looked at the wrong wrist with my watch. I think for me, I mean, portable charger, that's a great one. I love that one. I like to have they're called Zip Fizz. It's like a natural energy thing because it helps me kind of clear my mind. And when I'm feeling really like worn out at the end of the day or like in the middle of the day, it helps like boost that energy to keep me going. Yeah. And then, I really like having like protein bars because I get hangry and tired and low energy. I think it's really important to have like a snack.
Those are all good ones.
Oh, my wallet.
Yeah, that's a
I
good one
forgot my
too.
wallet this trip too. I was
Oh,
like, "Ah,
yeah.
crap."
I mean, how many times I've left my license in Evan's wallet because he usually carries it for
That's how
me,
Bryce is.
and he went on an international trip one time, and I was here, and he took it. I was like, "Well, thank goodness I don't really need to go anywhere." I always have my passport, but that's happened a few too many times if I'd like to have to admit that.
Bailey's going international, and she didn't even know
Yeah.
it.
Like, "Oops, okay." My mom would get so frustrated when we first started dating because we'd always do it, and we got in, like, such a habit. She's like, "How do you forget it?" I was like, "I don't know."
It's such an easy.
Because we go, like, out and, like, I'd be like, "Oh, can you just carry this? I'm not gonna bring a purse." I'm the worst. That's one thing I really wanna work on is carrying a purse more
That's what I started with, a
because
small purse because I really have a hard time because I'm worried to set it down and I'll forget it.
yeah,
And it's just a
like, a
burden.
cute, like, fanny pack or something is always a
Yeah,
good
what about
little
those, like,
add.
Lululemon
Yeah,
ones? Oh,
something
yeah.
like that.
They have, like, a ton of
Yeah.
those.
My little cousin just got me one, so I should start wearing that one more. I was wearing that all the time in the RV because it was just, like, I'd go do things,
Oh, that's
but when
smart.
I don't know, I need to be better, like, when I'm at my parents' house, like, actually having a purse because I just have my big bag and it's like, "Huh, that's not gonna work."
So how much more of your I don't wanna say life, that sounds weird. How much more of your life how long much longer do you anticipate being in the RV full time?
I feel like at least for the next year and a half for sure. Probably 2 is my guess. I don't know. It really depends on a lot of things, but the Olympics are next summer, so I feel like after the Olympics, then things will, we'll probably reevaluate things. Just that things
Will
are
you
gonna
guys
change.
keep the RV after
I told Evan, I was like, we need to keep it for when we have babies and we're gonna go on our first
so
trip in
fun?
our little RV that we built. And he's like, yeah, we can keep it. We could also sell it. I'm like, yeah, but like, how cute would it be to take our babies in it?
That'd be super cute. And, I mean,
I'm so sentimental.
nothing wrong with that. You could do it like a house where people, like, start with their starter house, and then they upgrade to a nicer house, or you could upgrade to a bigger
But like,
RV.
see, this is the thing with RVs. I look at like nice RVs that are so expensive, and I'm like, they're not pretty inside.
Yeah, it's
They're
very,
all RV
what's the word I'm looking for? They're all very
manufactured. Is that the
yeah, they all look very, like
which there's nothing wrong with that, and that's great.
but they're not,
But
like, unique.
yeah, and I just feel
You
like
customized yours,
yeah,
that's what's really
which we
cool.
could do again for sure, but maybe we will
But if
one
you
day.
buy a newer one, that's kinda, like,
Why
harder.
would
Why would you
you?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, I think for me, I would realize if I like, Bryce and I are always looking at fifth wheels and stuff like that, and your mom was like, "Well, then you can't, like, bring it as it's not as easy to, like, haul around," which is true because you can't, like, ride in it while you're driving around, which is true. But, like, I really would like to have 2 bathrooms and a washing machine.
Yeah, I get that. Definitely adjusting to a washing machine, but then again, for us, we were spending a lot of time in Europe the last couple of years, and we don't have a washing machine, or sometimes we do in Airbnbs, but we've also been like that's one thing with hotels is you don't have your own washing machine in a hotel. So when we were in Barcelona, we had to go do wash, and that was definitely a little bit of a task, like walking through a city with like luggage to go do your. And then Evan's shirt
Clothes.
shrunk. We washed one of his shirts, and it shrunk to like
Oh my gosh.
literally like a baby size.
Like
It
a
was.
baby shirt?
It was. I sent it to my little cousin, and I was like, "Does
Wait,
he
you
want
sent, like,
this?"
the shirt to your cousin or a picture
A
of it?
picture, and I was
I
like,
was
"Do you
like,
want
"There
this?"
you go." That's so
But his
funny.
material got all weird, so he actually couldn't.
One more question before we wrap this up. What's the one piece of advice you would give someone, whether they're traveling internationally or just in general? What would you give them?
I think something I've really learned from traveling, and I would give like advice to anyone who is starting to travel, is really being okay with things going wrong,
That's
even though
exactly what I was
that
gonna say for you.
sounds what?
That's what I was gonna say for you.
Yeah. Even though that sounds silly, like, being okay with that, I think that was, like, something that's really helped me is, like, the more frustrated you get with things going wrong, the harder travel really does become, and the more little things become big deals, and this also sounds silly, and yes, there's a make sure you're aware of your surroundings and all that, that's really important when you're going to new cities and know what kind of city you're going to, but being confident in traveling alone or with somebody, whatever it might be, and going into it with an open mind is huge because I think when you go into it expecting everything to go as planned and everything to go exactly how you think it's gonna go, it just doesn't, especially when you're traveling to, like Evan taught me this, when you're traveling somewhere new, I think having this idea this sounds really silly, but having an idea of where somewhere's gonna be like can almost disappoint you where you get somewhere. So to have low expectations is actually a really good way to travel. That sounds
I
very
love
silly, but
that.
that's, like,
I love
helped
that.
my, vision, I think, of really jumping into a culture and really enjoying it versus having this idea of what it's supposed to be like and it not being like that and then being disappointed where you can actually be enjoying it, you just had this idea of how it's gonna be and it's not, and that makes sense why it's
I
not.
love that. I think that I would almost, like, piggyback off of that 100% because for me, like, since I've never traveled to Europe before, Bryce is like, "You
That
need
was
to"
a shocking thing for me with Paris.
yeah, like, you land and you see IKEA apparently, like, it's not, like, this big glamorous thing, there's tourists all over the bottom of the Eiffel Tower, people make it look like there's, like, nobody underneath
Yeah,
it, and
that
it's,
was
like, construction
shocking for
and, like
me.
Yeah, I've heard all this.
Shocking.
And so it's like you got to understand that yes, it's a beautiful city, but you got to remember it's still like there's still life going
Yeah.
on there, and it's still like
It's
a
not
place.
Disneyland.
No, it's not like everything's picture perfect, not an ounce of
Yeah.
trash or something like that. I don't know. I've never been, but he said just make sure. I'm like, I'm not going in there with a lot of expectations. Like I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
really do think we're gonna have fun
You're
regardless.
gonna have so much fun.
Like we have fun no matter where we
And
go.
I think if you're going with somebody that you love, like that, that adds to it, especially Paris. Like I haven't gone with Evan, and I'm like, I'm gonna love Paris in a different way with you because it's supposed to be the city of love, and
Yeah,
it's just like
yeah.
that's fun.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. Just like making sure your expectations are at a place where you know that they need to be so you're not setting yourself up for failure. Because at the end of the day, if you're, going on any vacation, whether if it's to, Paris, Rome, New York, or, Colorado, it doesn't matter. It just make sure that it's not something that you're going to be disappointed in
For
because
sure.
something always goes wrong.
Something always happens,
Always.
and if you're staying at, like, a resort, yeah, you might be in Fantasyland there, but the second you stepped out of that, you're in reality and life, and just like you said, it's just everyone's living their life there, and you're just on vacation there. So, I think just looking at it in that way and jumping into the culture.
It's so true. Bryce and I went to Mexico.
Yeah.
The second we stepped out of the resort, we got like a taxi, and they weren't like that the yellow cab taxis. They're just like people driving their cars.
Yeah.
And we were driving to the airport. He picked up some random girl on the side of the road and brought her in our car. And I was like, but that was like what they did. That was their life. And I was like, who the heck is in our car right now? And Bryce's like, this is normal, Haley. And I was like, oh. I was like, who is this? Like, we're giving them a free ride?
Learning how to get Ubers or taxis in different, like, countries can be really interesting. At least
Bonjour.
or, like, okay, like, in
Yeah.
Paris, I could see, like, major cities, not as much, like, yeah, you can figure it out, I feel like a little easier, Uber, whatever, but, like, in Sardinia, in a little town, oh my gosh, we, like, had to get a taxi at, like, 4 AM. That was really tricky, like, yeah, it was not like Uber kinda situation, but, yeah, it's always different, so I think just going into it open-minded and really just I love that we actually had a conversation about this because I think that was something we were both sitting on. I was sitting on, like, what is my piece of advice? But once I
Yeah.
had time to really think about it, it's like
I think it's solid. I love that. I think that's great advice. I definitely would love to hear what your guys' perspectives on traveling, whether you like to travel more on a budget, if you're more of like a free spender, or if you like to travel internationally. If you've never been international, what are your comments, thoughts? Let us know. Don't forget that we're also going live on Wednesday. And we also had a thought of maybe going live on Fridays, depending on when we launch this. This is
Yeah.
going to be our next one.
Yeah, I think so. So just let us know what you think. I do think lives will change a little, especially with our international
Yes,
travels this
Bailey's
summer.
going to be
So
going
make
international
sure
way more.
you
So
are
did me.
following us on Instagram, unleash.club, and that your notifications are turned on. And we always have our information in our bio so you won't miss it.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you. Yes. Thank you so much for listening and watching today, whichever one you did. We can't wait for our next podcast.
Catch you on the flippity flop.
We always end like that. Just
Flippity
kidding.
flop.
That's our go.